Many thanks for staying with us. I am Justin Kadonye. We'll begin from Abuja. Now, authorities of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, have agreed to fine-tune INEC's planned deployment of electronic collation and transmission of results during elections in the country. At a meeting between the two commissions held at NCC headquarters in Abuja, INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu said the Commission had developed the soft and hardwares of the system, but will rely on the communication operators for the transmission of both figures and the scanned images of result sheets. He told the NCC Executive Vice Chairman that the Commission had deployed the electronic collation and transmission platforms on pilot basis during by-elections conducted recently, and therefore needs NCC's assistance for its full deployment during the Ekiti, Osun State and 2019 general elections.
To provide INEC with a combined network coverage map for all operators nationwide, including network strength that can help us deploy our e-collation system successfully.
Now, NCC Executive Vice Chairman Professor Omar Dambata welcomed INEC's ideas, saying the move will entrench transparency and credibility into the nation's electoral system. He also assured visiting INEC management of an interface between the Commission and telecom operators for successful deployment of electronic device.
All hands must be up there to ensure that this mandate is exercised freely and in an atmosphere that is open and transparent. And I think whatever contributions that the communications companies are expected to make, they should make, because they are equally critical stakeholders in the electoral process in this country.
Moving on now to National Assembly matters. Amid the growing concerns about excess and arbitrary charges by Nigerian commercial banks, the Senate has summoned the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, to appear before its Committee on Banking to give better clarity on the rules that provide for the protection of bank customers. This was the resolution by the Senate Tuesday, one which is equal to a motion by Senator Magnus Abe and 22 other co-sponsors. Senator Abe laments that the commercial banks in the country exploit the ignorance of customers to rob them of their hard-earned money, noting that the problem of illegal deductions, for instance, is a fraud on a massive scale.
Several Nigerians have suffered in one way or the other, but they are voiceless, because when the bank takes a little money from you, you look at the amount that is involved and the trouble that you need to go through to fight for your right, you decide to leave it. They take a little money from Mohammed, take a little from Obinna, take a little from Toyin. At the end of the day, it becomes the billions that is in the vault of the banks. I believe that it is the responsibility of this Senate to speak on behalf of the millions of voiceless Nigerians that do not have the means to pursue their rights.
Now, supporters of the motion say the need for urgent action to check the sharp practices of commercial banks is now a very crucial matter.
If somebody sit down and calculate what it means, 10 naira into 50 million, it becomes a huge money.
You take loans from these banks, there are a lot of charges that are not embedded in the conditions or memorandum of understanding you sign in getting these loans. These deductions are also done illegally most times, and you are not aware of it. So all these sharp practices by these banks, I want to believe, deserve more than mere resolutions of the Senate, that a deeper investigation be conducted on this matter to the advantage of the masses and populace of this country.
The motion is talking about those who are exercising power they do not have under the law, and the banks subscribing to that power in order to breach their fundamental obligation to the customers. And in doing so, I think this Senate has a responsibility to intervene. Thank you.
Now, Senator Yusuf Abubakar of Taraba Central, however, noted there is the need for caution in the approach of solution to the problems highlighted, as the bank customers equally have their own shortcomings.
you sign, you open an account. There are conditions in which these accounts are being operated, but many customers do not even care to look into what terms and conditions of opening bank accounts.
Shortly after taking the voice vote, the Senate President Bukola Saraki said sanitizing the nation's banking and financial sector is a very sensitive subject at this time of economic hardship.
I think that particularly at these difficult times, every naira is important, and we must be seen to defend the interests of a lot of Nigerians who don't have the voice to defend themselves. As again, the issue here is to get to the bottom of what the laws and guidelines are. I'm sure that they are in line with the law and they have the powers to make such pronouncements.
From the Senate, we'll move on now to the Lower House. Now, the Minister of Finance, Kemi Adoshu, and the suspended Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Mone Gwazo, have disagreed over the legality of the controversial suspension of the latter. At an investigative hearing by the House Committee on Capital Market and Institutions on Tuesday at the National Assembly, the minister insisted that the suspension of Gwazo followed a due process. Adoshu said Mone was suspended in accordance with the Public Service Rule, insisting that suspension is in line with the Public Service Rules 03045 and 03406. She said the Investment and Securities Act empowers the minister to act in absence of the board, adding that in absence of the board, the minister has the power to suspend the Director General.
Adeosun said Gwazo was suspended in accordance with the Public Service Rule, insisting that his suspension is in line with the Public Service Rules 03405 and 03406. She said the Investment and Security Act empowers the minister to act in absence of the board, adding that in absence of the board, the minister has the power to suspend the Director General.
We did not immediately suspend Mr. Gwazo because every allegation is just that, it's an allegation. It must be subject to some scrutiny, and the policy of the whistleblower unit is they have two levels of investigation. One is cursory and the other is detailed. Due to the seniority of Mr. Gwazo in the market and the potential impact of the matter, I asked them to go straight to level 2, which is you either prove a case or we throw this out. They came back with evidence that suggested that there was a very real need to issue a query to Mr. Gwazo, which is the procedure. Mr. Gwazo was then queried. He responded. But unfortunately, his responses contradicted the evidence that we had at hand. For example, Mr. Gwazo claimed they had resigned from the company. But the evidence we had from CAC showed him to still be a director and shareholder.
The suspension of Munir Gwazo, the suspended DG of SEC, was carried out in accordance with the Public Service Rules. Because we believe that Munir Gwazo is technically not the normal civil servant you would expect. He is a political appointee who has a tenure of appointment to run for the first 5 years and probably for another 5 years.
Gwazo insisted that Section 8 of the Investment and Security Act does not confer the finance minister with powers to suspend him.
We have made our submission, and our submissions address basically 3 issues, which are all linked to my suspension. The first part of the submission looked at the public service rule, which the Honorable Minister made reference to in writing my suspension letter. We noticed that the section of the public service rule that she quoted actually does not exist in the public service rule, because she quoted 03405 and 03406, which does not exist. But we anticipate that the intention was to make reference to 030405, 030405. And we also look at that section and strongly believe that that section does not give her the power to suspend me. We also look at the Investment and Securities Act, which clearly my appointment letter says everything regarding the DG of SEC should be governed by the provision of the Investment and Securities Act. We had commanded these hallowed chambers for this committee, which is consistent with Section 88A and B of the Constitution. And we had drawn a contrast with the greatest respect to the Honorable Minister to several of the steps that were taken, including the suspension itself and the processes that were taken by the Honorable Minister in implementing that suspension. And we had said in contrast that one of the things that was done was setting up of an administrative panel of inquiry against Mr. Muni Wazo by the Honorable Minister. And then we had submitted that is inconsistent with Section 36(1) of the Constitution. And then we had also submitted, by way of introduction, that all the steps taken by the Honorable Minister, including the suspension of the DG itself, is illegal.
Gwazo was suspended alongside the head of Media Division, Abdul Salam Naif Habu, and heads of the Legal Department, Anastasia Braimo. In his ruling, chairman of the committee, Yusuf Taujain, assured the committee will rule fairly on the matter.
Let me assure us all that the Committee on Capital Market and Institution will, as always, be fair, just, open to all. I therefore appeal to everyone that will be called to make submission to be civil in conduct, objective, and sincere in their presentation. Fair, firm, and frank where and when necessary.
The investigative hearing was later adjourned indefinitely.